Yeah, welcome. Here we are, the 3 p.m. panel, the Coffinverse, an overview of the entire story. Are you ready? I'd love to bring on the co-writer of all the Coffin Comics books, the one, the only, Mad Mike MacLean. Come on in, Mike.
Hey, everybody.
There you go, man. What's up, man? How you doing?
It's Saturday, and I'm here with you guys. It's a pretty good day.
It's fantastic, man. Well, thank you for being here. I thought this would be a fun, instructive kind of panel where we actually go over the entire history of the Coffinverse and we discuss all the books and all the chapters. That way, for folks who are unaware, kind of lay out the whole idea for everybody. Okay. How's that sound to you?
Sure. Let's give it a shot.
Let's give it a shot. It's funny because now we're going to be required to remember everything that we wrote. First up, though, let me just lay the groundwork. So Coffin Comics has been publishing new Lady Death and other character storylines since 2015. And right now, as we sit, that accounts for 20 what we call chapters. And they all operate inside a universe called the Coffinverse. And let me read from our explanation. The Coffinverse is a fictional shared universe where the stories of American comic book publisher Coffin Comics take place. Events in one title have repercussions in another title, and serialized chapters show the character's growth and change. Strongly rooted in the real world with a supernatural slant, the Coffinverse has all the same properties of the real world. However, it contains many fictional and heretofore unexplained elements. Never forget, the Coffinverse exists within an infinityverse consisting of countless separate universes. Expect the unexpected. So starting in 2015, our first book was Lady Death, Chaos Rules. And so in this particular storyline, this was the one and only storyline co-written by Brian Augustin, illustrated by Diraj Verma, colored by Sabine Rich, I believe, and lettered by Marshall Dillon. And the premise on this one is simple. This is a very good jump on now storyline where Lady Death awakens from a thing called the cursed sleep. And unbeknownst to Lady Death, actually, I think it's a fun clue, the Archangel Michael, aided by one of Lady Death's allies, actually lay the groundwork for her reawakening. And upon her reawakening, what she decides to do is to set a course and find out who put her to sleep. Also, in this particular chapter, which runs about 48 pages, she is gifted a new sword by her longtime weapons maker, Brock the Troll. And that sword's name is Chaos. Now, I digress a little bit. Lady Death is actually, her storylines have been told from as early as 1991, when she was a supporting character in a comic book called Evil Ernie. And during a former publishing enterprise of mine, she had 10 years worth of adventures. And what we like to say is that after a storyline called Dark Alliance, those particular times are sort of unexplained and broken up, yet connect somehow to this time and this newer continuity where Lady Death is cursed and asleep and then is actually reawakens. In this particular book, we reacquaint the reader with a major villain named Seance, who's a very smart, very powerful magician of questionable intent. And Lady Death actually does a lot of warlike fun, fighting characters like Baphomet. So this was a good start of her adventures. Next up, we were happy to welcome Mad Mike MacLean as co-writer, and this is his first storyline named Damnation Game. Mike, do you have any recollections about this particular story?
Yeah, I mean, this book holds a special place in my heart because it was the first comic book ever published with my name there on the cover. So I do remember Damnation Game very much. An innocent boy, Jake, is basically kidnapped and brought to hell. In this quest, he is like the only innocent in hell. And this is Lady Death makes it her driving quest to save him and to return him topside. But of course, because of the events in the previous chapter, she has become enemy number one in hell, public enemy number one. So she is being hunted, and her struggles to bring him topside bring her face to face with a brand new enemy who is trained by someone from her past. But the enemy, of course, is now the very popular Hell Witch. So first Hell Witch.
Exactly.
Who very, very early on shows that she's a force to be reckoned with. It is
she did a good job of handling Lady Death.
So you get a nice back and forth battle between her and Hell Witch in the beginning. So it's the first appearance of Hell Witch and the first appearance of Hell Witch's brother, a more roguish kind of hero type, Haxon, who is also just a lot of fun to write.
Haxon is really great. What we say to him is he is born of hell, but he seems to like American or like a earthbound pop culture. In storylines that we haven't even shown, I imagine him sort of being at, I don't know, let's say, I don't know, where people arrive, human beings arrive from hell and say, hey, man, what was the latest thing that's going on? Like, what was the latest John Carpenter horror film or something like that? And that's a shot of, an early shot, actually.
Which would be hilarious because they're about to be suffering for eternity and he's asking him about the latest movie.
Also, this is early. Now, just here, we also start introducing some of our earthbound anti-heroes. Like right here, the character is named Radha, and she is a voodoo queen, and she is getting a message about a global level ecological disaster, which we begin to further explore. So that was Damnation Game.
And as you can see, Brian was laying the foundation already from there for numerous issues later, which comes to a head in Blasphemy Anthem, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, later.
Well, I think also, too, like, I think we introduced one of the infernal engines in Damnation Game, which is going to come in handy for readers, longtime readers, in Lady Death Chapter 13 next year.
Right.
Anyway, and I guess part of what we're saying here, folks, is for Coffin Comics, all these chapters, while they stand on their own, the storyline does connect, and we do really map this whole thing out. So moving on, we have the one and only Extinction Express. And Extinction Express is continuing the story of Jake. Jake's uniqueness actually starts attracting a lot of hellborn ne'er-do-wells. This particular storyline also starts introducing an angel hybrid assassin that we like to call Atrocitas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name, but I like that pronunciation. What do you say, Mike?
That's how I pronounce it.
Atrocitas. So he is an angel demon hybrid and quite insane. And I'm happy to say here in this conversation that Atrocitas comes back in Hell Witch Sacrilegious, which we're offering in just a couple weeks. Is there any other recollections? Well, I mean, there's some intense stuff happens in this issue. Yeah. What do you want to talk about?
Even though it's somewhat of a continuation of the last issue, I really think this one stands on its own. We get to see Lady Death. Basically, it's a very she's almost at odds with this child because she's a long way from innocent. Lady Death, here she is, kind of in charge of this kid, and so in being in charge, she feels responsible. But she's never taken care of a kid like that at this point that we know of.
She's not much of a caretaker character.
Not much of a caretaker, but we come face to face with a lot of interesting creatures in that one. It's a lot of fun. Even some of the characters, they end up on a hellbound train.
They do.
Which I thought was a really neat tool that we have there, and of course, face to face with a demonic dragon.
Yeah, it's our version of like Murder on the Orient Express. That's why we actually called it Extinction Express, because it does happen on a train in hell.
Yeah.
I'm thumbing through to see any other cool memories. Okay, so this also has another Earthbound storyline where we cut to this woman who's actually chasing down some werewolves who are human traffickers. And we are introduced to this first appearance of this character, Chaotica, and more about Chaotica as time goes on. Yes. Next up is Oblivion Kiss. And any recollections on this one? It's kind of fun because we start really in the middle of this particular story.
Yeah, I think Brian really challenged me we came up with an idea, but to start in the middle, I think was a really unique way to take this story. And the take was Burning Man in Hell. So it's a giant Burning Man concert, basically, in hell. But you'll see very soon Lady Death's doing kind of some very unlike Lady Death things.
Yeah, in this case, unbeknownst to Lady Death, she has actually been mesmerized by this team of sorcerers. And she's been living this life, and she doesn't even know it, which is very, very irritating to her when she discovers it.
And there is the sorcerers kind of run this very hedonistic cult out in the middle of the wilds of hell.
Yes.
And anything goes, damned to the fallen angels, whoever wants to come is welcome there. But it's this very hedonistic cult. And so the story is her breaking out of her basically magic chains that have bound her.
Yeah, and I think the sad thing is once she does, here's a nice shot where a real good expression of Haxon. So Haxon, but yeah, when unfortunately Lady Death does wake up, she very sadly learns of the passing of a major character, and as in typical Lady Death style, she's pissed off, and someone's going to pay. This particular storyline also introduced another new character back on the Earthbound storyline, and that character's name is Hellslinger. So it's a follow-up story with the character Chaotica, who's now on a mission to find this particular character, Hellslinger. And as they meet up, actually some other forces start kind of coming down on them, and so they actually have to take off together. That's a little taste of that one. Next up, we have Merciless Onslaught, which was chapter 5.
What a great title.
Fun title. Now, this one was crazy, dude. This is where we introduced Reich. Do you remember him?
Yes.
So we have Herr Reich, a rogue Nazi scientist conducting experiments way out in the periphery of hell. And finally, the storyline related to the character Jake begins to come to fruition because Reich wants to possess the child because there's some powers and abilities that he could use. Any other thoughts about this one, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, Jake is basically a magical savant with mechanics, and he wants to, Herr Reich wants to create basically a master race in hell. Of these creatures called the Hybrid.
Yeah, the Hybrid.
So the story is essentially Lady Death with Haxon and
Hell Rider.
And Hell Rider are there to spring Jake from the onslaught. At the same time that this is happening, Hell Witch has gathered forces and she is moving in on Herr Reich's kind of industrial city. So you see her gathering her forces and her becoming more than just a hunting assassin. She has become a force to be reckoned with in hell.
Yeah, and here is Hell Witch doing her thing. And then on the Earthbound storyline, a lot of these characters come together. And what becomes known is that all these Earthbound characters have been called on a mission. There's actually horrific and gigantic ecological disasters occurring. And the character Rada had a vision and said that we need to go to hell, break into hell, get Lady Death, and bring her back to fight this emerging ecological disaster. And even here, as early as chapter 5, you see a lineup of all the various characters. And you're seeing this particular secret organization called the 13th Floor, and they're monitoring all kinds of what we call unnatural occurrences throughout the world. Yeah, it's a taste of that one. Fun.
What I like about that scene is that's the first time we kind of reveal that Lady Death and La Muerta and Zack are in the same universe, because you can see La Muerta and Zack on the monitors in the background.
Yes. Yeah, and actually, I think if you go back, if you keep looking at all the pictures, we added all these other characters that are talking about storylines that we're still going to get to. Well, here, next up, we have Unholy Ruin, which is the penultimate chapter of Lady Death's time in hell. So now that her beloved mother, Marion, is being held captive, it leads Lady Death straight into gore galore. I know, Mike, you had so much fun with gore galore. What would you like to say about it?
It was like a kind of a game show, reality show in hell, where she, like, think of it. What if they had American Gladiators in hell, and Lady Death was pit against all sorts of twisted people who are damned and then augmented to fight in this kind of arena, and it was
psychopaths. Yes, exactly. Broadcast all through hell.
So you have like the worst serial killers in the world hunting Lady Death, using whatever means to try to get at her. That was a lot of fun to write. That was one of my favorites of the early chapters.
Yeah, it introduced an element of humor that we don't always get to explore with Lady Death.
Yeah, through Devlin Dax was the host of the show.
Yes. And I would also say, too, that, again, on our Earthbound characters, realized that there is yet another character is introduced named Atticus Marrow, who located a hell font in New Mexico, right, in the Sonoran Desert, rather, and they are going to enter the hell font to get to hell. And they are interrupted by the one and only War Angel, who gets in on the proceedings and said, if you're going down there, you're not going without me. And so a way to relate to, I guess, War Angel is like a perpetually pissed off, super powerful angel who's like always stuck on war. There's another fun shot. I guess another neat thing on this chapter was Haxon's mind was taken over, and there was a great Lady Death versus Haxon fight. So that was a fun one. Yeah, this being a penultimate chapter, I'm thumbing through the pages myself. We don't want to give it all away, but we want to give you a little bit of a taste. Fun, fun, fun. Yeah, I mean, at this point, too, all things are leading up to a climax in this chapter 7. You have Hell Witch's army finally descending. And as it turns out, all our characters are kind of descending into the city of Dis at the same time. And here is definitely the climax of Lady Death's time in hell, Apocalyptic Abyss. And this is the all-out battle book. Anything to add about that one?
Yeah, Lady Death and members of the Hell Raiders have been kind of, I don't like to use the word chased, but they have gone into this hellborn city of Dis, and there is quickly a magic shield that's put around the city. Outside the city, Hell Witch has gathered with her forces. So not only is there a city full of Hellborn that want to see Lady Death destroyed, there is an army of Hellborn on the outside. The Hellborn elders don't want Hell Witch to kill Lady Death because it will only increase Hell Witch's status and power. So it's kind of some political maneuverings within Hell. So it comes out. There's a lot of action in this one because they not only have to fight through the city. You know that shield's going to eventually come down, and that she's going to have to face Hellwitch again. So, without giving too much away, it was before recent chapters. It was the hardest.
Yeah, it was very hard to write. We had finally all those we call them topside Earthbound characters finally meeting up with Lady Death. All those kinds of interactions. Yeah, bringing all those elements together and. Yeah, looking at the Hellborn Elders. And out of that is a climax that will bring Lady Death to Earth. But before we did that, we actually did a storyline called Nightmare Symphony. And Nightmare Symphony actually takes place before Lady Death's cursed sleep and gives an explanation of the series of events that led to the cursed sleep and some very interesting revelations of Lady Death's relationship to characters like Chaotica and Hellslinger. Anything you'd like to add on that?
This one is one of my favorite chapters. It's a little bit of a more a single storyline. You could almost jump into this one and read it just for, it's not as connected to the others. It's a great revenge story. I don't know how much you want to reveal, but a great tragedy befalls Lady Death. And how does she react to great tragedy? She's going to seek revenge. And it really is. It's an emotional story, but there's some badass action in it. And it was a lot of fun to write. But I do like this one a lot. This is one of my favorite Lady Death chapters. I like them all. This is one of my favorite.
Yeah, and I mean, as people read the material, they'll see characters coming in and out to just add to the layers. I think you could count on reappearances by characters like Seance. In this particular storyline, brings back a 90s era Pulido character named Leviatha as well. So yeah, this was a bittersweet storyline, but it did inform where we were headed next. And then we're all the way up to chapter 9 here, and this is Scorched Earth. So in principle, the premise here is the Hell Raiders went to hell to bring Lady Death back to fight off this emerging extinction level event. And instead, this happens. And we harken back to a time where Lady Death fights a massively powerful character named Atrocity, the mother of abominations. And the true villains of this series are revealed as the Trinity, which are, again, extinction level villainesses. They are I call them like eco witches. They are essential forces of nature that are corrupted. I don't know if you have anything to add to this one.
We also see the organization Halo, who sees unnaturals as a threat to humanity, and they have been augmenting humans, giving them the ability to try to fight these supernatural beings. So as soon as Lady Death and the crew enter, they are met with those. It's also the first time our current artist, Diego Bernard, is
That's
drawing.
true.
The art is just amazing in this one. I love it. There's also a very big tragedy that befalls Lady Death in this one as well.
And it introduces the villain of this arc, the Sect. And yeah, the art is really cool. And there is a tragedy. Yeah, here's this cool character named Gage, sort of like a Frankenstein-like character from Halo who's charged with assassinating Lady Death. And yeah, another action-packed one. Here we're starting to see the character Chaotica express more powers. And I think she sort of is like her namesake. There's a chaotic quality to her power. And in fact, I would go so far as to say is she's one of the most powerful beings in the Coffinverse, and very dangerous because she really can't regulate her ability. Seeing if there's anything else. Yeah, this is where the threat of the Trinity really comes into sharp focus, leading us into chapter 10, which is Blasphemy Anthem.
Blasphemy Anthem.
What do you have? What's your recollection of this one, Mike?
This was, we've been doing these kind of love letters to the Secret Wars and all the big giant crossover events, and this was our first step into that world, where there's a massive battle between who are the Sworn, the members of the 13th floor. Their kind of action crew is the Sworn, and the Trinity, which are these, as you said, these hyper-powered elemental, twisted elemental beings. And there is a lot of action in this one. How long was that one?
56 pages of story and art.
So that one extended a little longer than the others as well. And yeah, it was. Previously, I said one was the hardest to write. Now this one became the hardest to write because you had all these different characters with different motivations, and you had to give them all kind of their moment in camera lens. So
yeah, getting all that balance, and then no shame in our game. We continue to introduce characters like the Sisterhood, which we are dealing with more fully right now in chapter 13, and we previously introduced this cool character named Hana, which was initially introduced and designed by Jesse Witchman. And yeah, this is definitely our loving homage to the giant superhero crossovers of the day. And just show some more cool art. And if this is all done in Coffin style, I will point out too that we don't have any censorship in our comics. I had a great conversation with Mike one time, and I wasn't actually writing curses out. And Mike was saying, is there a reason we're not writing curses out? And I said, oh my gosh, that's just something left over from the 90s. It's like, hell man, let's start cursing. But and so we started doing cursing and having some more sex scenes in our comics. Well, at the end of this particular story, something occurs and Lady Death appears. Something occurs here that we do not know. And then additionally, we introduce a character named Insurrectus, who's actually proving to be very important into next year's storyline, Deathocalypse. Moving on to chapter 11. This is Lady Death, Malevolent Decimation.
Malevolent Decimation. I said it right.
And this one says, Lady Death has always been the bad girl, but once upon a time she was absolutely evil. Obsessed with annihilation, the diva of death sought to snuff out the entire human race and turn the earth into an endless graveyard. Thankfully, Lady Death changed her wicked ways to become a champion of the downtrodden and a source scourge to evil demonkind throughout hell. For generations, the evil seething within the witch's soul lay dormant, forgotten, until now. And that's true. The evil was unleashed. And so this one came out earlier this year. We introduced a multitude of characters in this story, including Mujai, Madam Midnight. It's a cool shot of Mujai. And the one and only Johnny Devlin, a.k.a. Devilock. The art on this one is bananas.
It is. It's phenomenal.
And Insurrectus continues his journey, trying to find his brides, increasing his intellect moment by moment. And at the end of this one, Lady Death actually rises up at Army of Demons. And this is a mock-up, but this is Lady Death Chapter 12, Treacherous Infamy, which should be in your cold and greedy hands sometime this November. And this is The Evil Unleashed. Anything you'd like to add about this particular chapter, Mad Mike MacLean?
Well, I don't want to give too much away because people haven't read it yet, but
that's true.
Both of these chapters, which are closely connected, were so much fun to write. It's fun to write heroic characters, but man, it's even more fun to write people who are evil. So Lady Death really shows her evilness. The art is just astounding. You get fun, amazing things like Lady Death on a jester float in the middle of the Monogras that's on fire while there's demonic zombies running by. It's just a whole lot of fun. And I think people are going to be really pleased when they get their hands on it.
Heck yeah, that is Treacherous Infamy. Now, The Coffinverse is a contained universe, and I'd like to jump right over and talk about the one and only Zack the Zombie Exterminator. And look, this is a horror comedy title, but we've actually had Zack play pretty instrumental parts in other books like Lady Death, Blasphemy Anthem. What do you want to say about our boy Zack?
This is kind of like the underdog favorite of a lot of Coffin fans. I hear a lot of them saying how much they love Zack. It was, I gotta say, we first wrote this as a screenplay, and it was probably, not probably, it was definitely the best screenplay I've written.
It's incredible.
I really am proud of this story. It's funny. I think Brian came up with a tremendous character. It's funny. It has heart. You see a story arc, a rise and redemption and fall, and it really was a lot of very entertaining to write. Think of what if Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World became zombie exterminators, and you have the basic premise. Some kind of lovable redneck metalheads killing zombies.
So I'd like to point out that how we offered Zack is 96-page graphic novel. A couple things I'd like to point out, that there is the introduction of a major villain named Sloggoth, who is a death god. And I'm, pro tip, Sloggoth will be important in the future. I think is a very important seminal villain. The other thing I'd like to point out about the boys is, although they're a bit of jokers, they are really, really important in a pinch. And in Blasphemy Anthem, they definitely dispatch some bad guys in very unique and profound ways. So you could actually expect to see Zack, Zane, and the cast of Zack the Zombie Exterminator appear throughout 2021 in Lady Death during the company-wide event Death Ocalypse. So I'm going to take a tad of a back seat as we now move into the description of more of a street level storyline that we have at Coffin Comics, the one and only La Muerta. So Mike MacLean, let's set up La Muerta for people who don't know her.
Sure. La Muerta follows the story of Maria Diaz. She is an Army veteran of the War of Afghanistan who comes home, hopefully to a peaceful existence, which is not to be. She finds that her family, at an event after the Dia de los Muertos, her family runs afoul of a very violent cartel, the Zavala cartel, and her family is slaughtered. Maria is left for dead. Is she dead? We don't know, but she is then nursed to health by the mysterious Faustino, who is this homeless gentleman who has a very dark past. But he nurses her to health, and months later, she finds out her family has been killed, and she wants to seek revenge, and she is visited by the spirit of Santa Muerte, who is the spirit of kind of the downtrodden. It's the patron saint in Mexico, the downtrodden, and she spurs Maria to take the guise of La Muerta, who is an avenging vigilante. So one by one, she dispatches of the Zavala crew, the Z crew, which is
Z crew,
a drug, death worshipping crime cartel,
headed up by the infamous Mama Z.
So in the first unit, you see she takes down a couple of the crew members, but in the second,
here's the second chapter we call Last Rites.
Yep, she kind of becomes the hunted. So she starts out as the huntress, and the Z crew begin hunting her. And there's some tragedy, and eventually, though, as we all know, it has to come to head where she comes face to face with Mama Z herself. So since there's more chapters, you know how it ends. La Muerta is victorious, but is it the last we'll see of Mama Z is the question.
Picking out some beautiful pages. This features the There's been a consistent creative team since the inception on La Muerta. The illustrator throughout the series is Joel Gomez.
Yeah.
And so that covers her origin, so to speak. And
I will say Joel and Cece De La Cruz, wow, they work so well together.
yes.
The art and the colorist, it's just amazing how well they mesh and complement each other's work.
And then we introduce the third chapter, which is La Muerta Vengeance. What is your recollection of Vengeance?
Well, I mean, as you would think, after avenging her family, La Muerta thinks she's done with the violent life and she wants to settle down to a peaceful existence. But Santa Muerte visits her once again and demands that she avenges an innocent life, taken by this ghastly figure here that we later reveal is the embodiment of La Llorona, who is a figure in Mexican folklore. We will soon learn that La Llorona has been brought back by Brujo, which is basically a dark warlock, another crime lord who's trying to take over Mama Z's territory, but he has an insidious plan, and he is kidnapping undocumented immigrants. And in this chapter, we do not know the plan, but La Muerta teams up. At first, she becomes they fight, as often the case in comics, but she ends up teaming up with the vigilante Loco, who is a luchador vigilante, who on the surface seems just out of his mind, but does it hide something else? And again, the amazing art of Joel there.
Yeah. Then next up, we have chapter 4, which is Retribution. And you'll notice most of the Coffin Comics books are 48 pages and square bound, and frequently at least 48 pages of story and art. In Retribution, continues and solidifies this particular storyline. And actually in this one, it's to give away too much. This really is the culmination of that particular story.
Mm-hmm.
Then moving on, chapter 5 is Ascension. Ascension. Any recollections of this particular storyline? I remember sitting down and breaking it down with you.
Yeah, so this one, again, La Muerta kind of finds herself as a soldier without a mission. She has been seemingly abandoned by Santa Muerta, but little does she know, dark forces are using forbidden magic you learn right away, and Brian just showed you, to basically bring back Mama Z from the dead. And in this story, La Muerta teams up with Loco because she doesn't have a mission to fight off drug dealers, but it's soon discovered that there's someone hunting her. Is your sound off there, Brian?
No, I'm good. I'm sorry. We're looking for chapter 6. Sorry. This is chapter 5. Sorry. So
we find that La Muerta and Loco have been led into basically a trap by Mama Z and a crew of the psychotic, kill crazy gang called the Espada Brothers. Who are based off of they're kind of influenced by some characters in the movie Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, if you remember. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. That's not right. Smoking Aces.
Smoking Aces, exactly.
Smoking Aces. So.
And then, which leads us to, boom, chapter 6, Retaliation.
Retaliation. What a beautiful cover, too, on that one.
Yeah, just remarkable. Paolo Pantalena cover. So on this one, that particular storyline comes to a complete head.
Yeah.
And this is the old, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say this is probably the most violent, bullet-ridden La Muerta chapter of all of them. It's wall-to-wall action. We kind of liken it a little bit to the very first Rambo movie, First Blood, where she's first hunted and then turns the tables on those pursuing her.
Exactly. And so this actually culminates her first major arc, where there is a final showdown between La Muerta and Mama Z. We will not reveal what the heck happened. So that's our street level. That's our street level set of characters. But back to Hell. We have the one and only Hell Witch, and we spun her off and gave her her own series. She basically demanded it of us, Mike. And so Hell Witch wasn't always the dominant Hellborn leader she is today, able to go toe-to-toe against Lady Death. In her humble past, Hell Witch began life as a lowly hatchling, the lowest caste in the magnificent Hell Hive, destined forever to be a pit slave, discarding body parts in the pain pits. But through sheer drive and determination, she rises through the caste to become a warrior, to take a lover, to gain respect. But the Hive Queen takes notice and makes Hell Witch's life unbearable. Can this lowly pit slave topple a mighty hierarchy out to get her? So really just continuing off of her last appearance in Lady Death Apocalyptic Abyss, we follow the origin of Hell Witch, featuring the amazing art. This is the first Coffin art of Diego Bernard.
Yeah.
And our art and creative teams have been very consistent. All of our books have been lettered by Marshall Dillon, and the great majority of our books have been colored by CC De La Cruz. In this particular storyline, the art is incredible.
Yeah. It is.
And there is some, I must admit, Mike, there's some violence and some tragedy in this one. So that was her first chapter. And then her second chapter, we called it The Forsaken. Do you have any recollections about the story and the lessons that Hell Witch was supposed to learn?
Well, in The Forsaken, we see her, I think, the evolution of what others would see as a supervillain. Obviously, Hell Witch does not see herself that way. She is guided by the principle that hell should be for the hellborn, and that the damned and the fallen angels and the demons from other dimensions don't belong there. And they are kind of impurities on their sacred land. So in Hell Witch's mind, she is a hero. In this one, she is being taught by seance to try to lose her sense of remorse, her empathy, because she cannot be a great leader in Seance's mind if she is too compassionate. She's thrown out of Seance's school and must wander the wastelands, and she's told not to come back until you've gotten rid of that empathy. So this is that journey, really, and really a change in her character.
Yeah, which we'll really see expressed in the upcoming chapter, Hell Witch Chapter 3, Sacrilegious.
Sacrilegious.
In fact, yes, this is another lesson learned. So folks, up until now, this has been an exploration of all the chapters that we've offered. If there is any time for any Q&A, maybe Jimmy Calabrese will rifle off some. We wanted to give you an overview, but we also want to let you know that coming soon is our company-wide event next year, Death Apocalypse, where our popular characters cross over. It's bananas. We're working on Lady Death Chapter 14 right now for next year. Talk about an ambitious project, Mike.
Yes.
So, Mike, do you have any reflections of this time together and working on all this stuff overall?
It's been crazy. It's been amazing. I've loved every bit of it. I never thought when I was a kid, I'm a longtime comic fan, and when I was a little kid, I never thought I'd actually be writing, real comics with amazing artists and other amazing writers to work with. And it's just been a pure joy to be able to do it. Don't tell Brian this, but I would have done it for free. But it's so much fun, and I just always appreciate the people that support us and let us tell more stories.
Yeah, that part's really neat too. And I guess, we really here at Coffin Comics have just gotten started. So this is a continuity-driven universe, and yeah, we're just been happy doing it. We are very deep into next year's production. I can say that both Mike MacLean and Joel Gomez are working on La Muerta Chapter 7. Diego Bernard is halfway done illustrating Lady Death Chapter 13, which we've concluded writing. And the beast that is Lady Death Chapter 14 is coming into focus. And thereafter, we are in the infancy of tackling Hell Witch versus Lady Death Wargasm, which is going to be Wargasm, which is going to be a lot of fun. Any comments out from the ether, Jimmy Coffin?
Well, we got Leona wants to see some of that artwork that we teased earlier.
All right, so we're going to give you some tease art on Lady Death Chapter 13, and these are rando pages. This is a page with Lady Satanas. Mike gets to see this for the first time too, I think.
I peeked at the earlier video. That was the first time I saw it.
This is a double-page spread showing the city forming over Giza, Egypt. And this is the headquarters, so to speak, of Insurrectus. This is, check out this page, Mike. This is Atticus Marrow.
Well, that's perfect.
Doing something with Lady Death's mind. Look at that art.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Wow. It's kind of fun when you write it and then you start seeing it come to life, right? And then here's Tiva Steelheart out on the res, taking her wolf form. And this is a fun scene. This is Michael the Archangel and the character Volnavia, one of the war angels. Beautifully rendered page. Isn't that neat?
Yeah, sir.
And that's just out of order tease on Lady Death. And here's some La Muerta Chapter 7 pages by Joel. And this particular chapter does tie into our Death-Ocalypse storyline. And the premise here is La Muerta. And Mike, do you mind describing to people the basic premise of Chapter 7?
Yeah, La Muerta Onslaught. What it is La Muerta is visiting with Loco at their basically their hideout, their lair, which is this a dilapidated theme park called Fiesta World. And the remaining members of the Espada brothers have tracked them down with the help of Sombra, and they go in to basically eliminate La Muerta to kind of earn back their reputation. But of course, Loco has some tricks up his sleeves. There's some very deadly booby traps in Fiesta World. The two sides come to a head, but then something very unexpected happens. There is the expect the unexpected, as Brian says. The Fiesta World becomes overrun by these demonic progeny, which tie into Death-Ocalypse.
Death-Ocalypse. So, folks, I think that's kind of our time.
All right.
Coming up at 4 o'clock is our final panel for Crucial Con. I want to thank Mad Mike MacLean for coming in and talking about story. Really appreciate you, man. We hope all of you guys and girls out there had a rocking good time. And you've been great. We've been Coffin Comics. We're going to talk to you in a couple minutes. Thanks, Mike.